Greetings, everyone. I'm excited to welcome Janis Zech, CEO and co-founder at WeFlow. Janis, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Hey. Yeah, great to have you here. Really looking forward to this discussion, with your background. So first, tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. Yeah. I started my first company with 21 that failed, then started my second one with 24. It's a company called Fiverr, which I ran for 8.5 years. When I left, we were around 235 million gross revenue. We sold it on the way, then actually run the company which bought us, which was listed in Luxembourg. We relisted that to Frankfurt, did 3 acquisitions in 18 months. So yeah, quite an interesting experience overall. And then, went out and basically had to recalibrate what to do next. And for me, it was clear that I always continued to start companies. So I started a venture studio, which regularly started new companies. I actually wanted to do 10 in 10 years, but that never worked out because I only did 2 in 3 years. One is a service now for mid-market, which was acquired by Persona, a company called Beck. And then over time, I realized I want to go back for something long-term. It's the reason why I started WeFlow, and I'm loving it. It's great.
Oh, that's great. So startup life from age 21 and then sold fiber and then the venture studio and now back into startup life. So I love that. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about WeFlow. What products and services does WeFlow offer?
Yeah. I mean, WeFlow originally got started actually at Fiverr, where I observed a lot of problems around data quality in the CRM, reps not necessarily wanting to update the CRM because it's quite cumbersome and it takes a lot of their time, which they rather spend closing deals. And then from there, you have challenges around pipeline visibility, deal visibility, team performance visibility, and also forecasting. So this was really like originally started the idea at Fiverr. And yeah, so it's a revenue intelligence platform, basically doing mainly 3 things: improving your Salesforce hygiene, providing visibility into all the nitty-gritty opportunities and stuff that's going on, and then provides you with more accurate forecasting, which I think is quite important. And as always in the intersection of finance. So yeah, happy to talk a bit more about that as well.
Yeah, definitely. So it sounds like this was your own pain point then that you had at Fiverr, with that sales pipeline and that team. So then created this application. So tell us, so do you integrate into all the popular CRM systems then? And then who are you targeting for this? Is it set up for a pipeline for, say, technology and SaaS companies, or really any company with a pipeline?
Yeah. Very good question. So we're currently focused on Salesforce. It's the largest ecosystem, as you know, right? Like 24% market share, and mostly in the mid-market enterprise, I'd say the default standard. So it's a product so you can just self-onboard and get started and immediately, save 2 to 3 hours a week per rep in doing pipeline updates. And then, we enrich essentially Salesforce data with our own deal signals to provide better visibility. And then a lot of basically workflows centered around, one, really process compliance. So how do you actually run a predictable and efficient go-to-market process? And then secondly, how do you provide visibility to roll out across the different layers, and making sure that you have a bottom-up forecast versus, the typical top-down forecast you also do in the budgeting process from the finance side, right? So I think like that's something I've always observed, right? Like the board having an idea about what the next 12 months should look like, finance doing essentially their modeling, but then the bottom-up planning and the top-down planning in very seldom cases come together seamlessly. And I think there's a lot of opportunity to make that a better process for everybody.
Oh, I totally agree. As a CFO, always looking for that commit number for my sales team. What's that bookings commit? So I wish I had a tool like this. So you're looking for companies who have Salesforce, so you integrate to Salesforce, and then the focus is on any industry or technology, or tell us what industries do you go after?
Yeah. I mean, fundamentally, I think if you realize that you bought Salesforce, right, and you have a feeling that kind of data quality isn't there, right, we can help you for sure. But I think the typical forecasting process is probably most advanced in software as a service companies, B2B technology companies. So we typically target companies with at least, 5 to 10 people in the revenue team, mostly centered around account executive, also a bit of like customer success, account management, because they also work on pipelines more and more, especially in these times. And then, I think the level of sophistication around the forecasting process established really depends on the company, but that doesn't mean that you can't have better visibility into, team performance or really like deal signals, enriching what's going on a nitty-gritty detailed level. Things like, even simple things like, how long is the opportunity in a specific stage, right? Like, are you multi-threading? Are you, like, what's your activities? And, it's quite interesting because you would think that these things come out of the box, but they don't. And most teams don't run that way. And then I mean, you have a lot of stored pipelines, loaded pipelines to see what comes into the pipeline and what goes out of the pipeline from a start and end period is something that, many teams struggle with. So you can basically get started within, 15 minutes, I'd say. Obviously, every tool is only as good as you use it, right? So fundamentally, you have to run your operating cadence within WeFlow. That's like what most of our customers do. They run their one-on-ones, weeklies, pipeline reviews and forecasting meeting in WeFlow.
Okay. And so when you reach out to prospects, I assume you're reaching out to the VP of sales, CROs, and I'm sure every CFO who sees a tool like this is like, yes, this sounds good. I need better forecast accuracy. So do you have to convince the CFO and say the sales leader, or really the sales leader and they say, hey, CFO, by the way, we're going to have more accurate forecasting?
Yeah. I mean, typically we speak to the sales leaders and revenue operation teams and also the sales managers. I think that's where, I'd say like that's our core focus. But as you know, right, times have changed. So 2019 to 21 was a pretty interesting times where many companies just bought software left and right. They didn't look at user stats. And I mean, you even see that in the latest kind of vendor report where, the ACV numbers dropped significantly. I think that's due to obviously seat deceleration and just companies being a lot more disciplined. So yes, we do talk to the finance teams as well, but I wouldn't say it's like the primary decision maker or buyer. It's more like a approval. But this is, I mean, in that sense, something that comes up more and more, and also something where I strongly believe, bringing finance and sales together in those type of companies is actually paramount. It's really what is often missing, similar to sales and marketing, right? This standard conflict. And if we can help resolve that, I mean, that's a dream, right? Like, I think it's hard to do, but for sure, right? Like, I think if you have a better, rigor around your core processes, around your stages, knowing exactly when to fill in what, and your qualification criteria, so your SQLs, MQLs, and however you PQLs, right, like are actually clearly tracked. It helps a lot to then level that up and build a better, top-down model as well, right? So yes, I mean, I think finance plays a big role here as well.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I see a huge value proposition there. So I love that message. So when did you found WeFlow?
We started the company in like 2021. So like basically started the company. I mean, I've started a few companies. Like this is my first fully remote company. So we're completely distributed. And, I think, you can build great remote and on-site companies or really shitty ones. It really comes down to the core team and the people you can attract. And I think that's something, I would, say remote is not cheaper in terms of people, but you find different type of talent. And yeah, it's been really, really good. I think the way we work is quite focused and productive for us. I mean, I'd say everybody says that, but yeah, quite happy about it.
Well, I did interview a founder who has an application to help leverage time and technology for all the remote teams. So yeah, a lot of technology at play now to handle that as well. So what's your current team size?
We're 15 people. Yeah. So we're still
15.
quite more. Yeah. We just
Okay.
raised our seed round with great inventors and charity ventures. And yeah, I mean, I think, really been focused around building a fantastic team. And I think that's just improving the overall, revenue process.
Yeah, that's great. And so you had the recent seed round, which we'll talk about. And are you generating revenue right now or pre-revenue?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're generating revenues. We're not disclosing ARR numbers at these days, but yeah, I mean, we have a bunch of very happy customers. And obviously the core focus of us right now is growing company, as you would imagine, after raising a seed round and focusing a lot on product in the last couple of years.
Yeah, makes sense. And yeah, let's talk about that seed round. So you had a recent seed round, it looks like $3.2 million. And tell me about the triggers or milestones that led you to raise that seed round.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for us, it was really centered around building a product users love. I think that's always like something. And especially in sales technology, I think you have a lot of companies which started from actually getting better visibility as an analytics tool rather than a workflow tool. So if you think of modern tools like Airtable, Notion, right, like Asana, they're very easy to use. They're very intuitive. You can just go in and get started. And that's something we wanted to do for the revenue process, right? And so we've been really focused on just onboarding tons of users and iterating in the product. And we saw really good usage stats. And that's, I think, what excites investors, because if you can do that with, hundreds of users, you can do that with millions of users. And in this specific area, that's extremely valuable. So not just, kind of the sales productivity part, but then also actually helping, to understand what is the best next step, right? Like, I think fundamentally, if you work on the outbound side, you typically work in companies like Outreach or Salesforce, right? And these are cadence based. So you have specific cadences, how you run your outbound motions, almost like a task tracker. But in a pipeline, if a customer tells you, call me in 3 weeks, you don't send them an email the next day because your task tracker tells you to call them next day, or send them an email, right? So I think pipeline management and forecasting is a lot more centered around, how to improve the buying experience and how to make sure that you actually know what the next steps are. But that's even often a key challenge, right? Knowing, is there like, and then on the visibility side, right? Like, I mean, the rep might know, okay, yeah, I have a meeting scheduled, but you can't see that in the reviews. And so, there's no meeting scheduled, there's no next steps. That's a problem, right? So you should talk about it. And yeah, it's so yeah. But like the main trigger was really centered around like the great user stats.
Okay, so there's that, and that is a common theme. There's some traction that then you can put in front of investors to raise their interest. And I'm curious, with your investor background, has that shaped how you now operate WeFlow at all? Has that influenced, because you lived the startup life, became an investor, now back into startup life, and has that influenced how you guide and manage WeFlow?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I spent a few years as a venture partner at Point Nine Capital. I think it wasn't mentioned yet, but like, yeah, I mean, of course, right? If you see, like, I think as a founder, what's very important to understand is that venture capitalists invest because they want a extreme outcome, and so I think you should ask yourself, is that even realistic with my company, and can we achieve that, right? So I think, and then I think there's just some tactical things, how you go about it. I personally, think that like you have specific, focus times, and as founder, you're always overworked with many different things. So it's very, very important to focus. You'll get a lot of investor inbound. Everyone will be super nice and interested to learn more. That's far away from actually, getting an investment round. So really, becoming very good at managing your time and not spending too much time on just, hunting investors in that sense, or like talking to investors, but really being focused on, doing that in specific sprints, knowing, okay, I go out now, fundraise, then parallelize track within 2-3 weeks, talk to everybody, obviously ideally get introductions to the general partners at the funds, and do that in person for sure. And personally, I do like building relationships a bit earlier. I do think it's a good thing. Again, 2019 to 21, some of these investment rounds we saw were overpriced and also created by FOMO. I'm not a big fan of that. I think fundamentally similar to working together with somebody on your team, right? You'll spend a lot of time with your investor. So if I spend the next 10, 20, 30 years, ideally, right, with somebody, I'd love to know that person a bit previously, and then, doing reference checks on investors, I think is a super important thing as well.
And you kind of answered my next question about fundraising lessons learned that you'd like to share with the SaaS founder community. But big one, building relationships early, and you mentioned doing reference checks on investors. Anything else you'd like to share from, say, the investor perspective for founders listening on lessons you've learned from that side of the table?
Yeah, I mean, so I think every investor is receiving a lot of inbound, right? So I think getting the attention from folks is not necessarily easy, and it's very easy to say no, right? And I think it's like fundamentally centered around trust. So don't don't lie to investors in that sense, right? Like, I think it's very, very important, like, because they can smell it, they can see it, and they'll go out and just basically reference check you from 360-degree angle, right? So like they have teams calling in on your customers, they have teams, calling in on people you work with. They want to know who they spend a lot of time with, and so I think being aware of that is really important. And then typically the process involves, like, what happens when you leave the pitch at the investor, right? Is they will have a bunch of very heated debates internally. So understanding their decision-making process early on is really important as well. And then I think what's also really important is, like, can you trust, can you trust that founder? And on the flip side, can you imagine working together from a fundamental, like, cultural perspective is also not unimportant as well. I'm probably forgetting many things, but yeah, just a few thoughts.
Oh, no, that was great. There was a lot of great insight there. And it's funny because founders always say, hey, reference check investors. But on the investor side, doing the same thing, reference checking founders, coworkers, colleagues, checking out on that. So yeah, great insight for the founder community. So as you guide and scale WeFlow right now, is there a favorite number or metric that you're focused on to manage the business?
I mean, I think in SaaS, the revenue numbers, obviously or like the MRR number, net new MRR, but at this stage, right, is fundamental. And then ARR runway, right? Like, obviously a cash burn and, kind of a runway is fundamental. But I think these are fundamental outcomes, right? When you're in the stage we are in, right? Like, it's really centered around, like, what go-to-market channels actually work for you. And, like, I think most startups start go-to-market channels and they're fundamentally bad at them, right? Because you don't have any resources to be really, really good at them. So focusing on the right go-to-market channel and then scaling that and understanding what works, I think requires a lot of experimentation. I always call it, like, you have the product market fit phase, right? And that is a moving target, and it's not black or white, right? So it's like, it's kind of a continuum. And you even see companies right now which had probably very strong product market fit 12, 18, 24 months ago. But because discipline has arrived, suddenly you're not part of the core tech stack anymore. And so your product market fit actually slipped, right? So I think that's one. And then it's like, really, like, what's your basically market fit, right? Like, so your ICP, persona, messaging, and then what can you actually scale, right? Like, after that phase, you get into that level where it's really centered around unit economics and, what are the investment and ROI in these different channels. And that's typically, when you raise a Series A, and you need to be able to prove that. So back in the days when I was investing with Point Nine, like, these were fundamental questions we had, and we wanted to see early product market fit and then being able to scale that. But for the Series A, you definitely want to be able to showcase specific metrics and specific channels that basically outline what the financial metrics look like a few years ahead.
Yeah, man, that great advice. I love that about your comment, product market fit slipping in, say, 2023's environment where you thought you had product market fit. And then, yeah, things have tightened up, much more scrutiny on those products. So yeah, great insight there. And you mentioned go-to-market channels that work. Do you have one that's really effective right now with pushing WeFlow out into the community?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. So, from experience, what we did is we started content very, very early, because that has always lead time. but can be a great channel. And I think it like for me, all the channels always work, but there's channels that are more dominant. And as a startup, you don't have the luxury of going into many channels. So yeah, content for sure, something that's working quite well for us. And then, then I think early, the most direct channel is always kind of outbound and outbound sales. That's typically right, like the founder led sales, network sales, referral sales. And then for us, I mean, LinkedIn is quite important as a channel in communities, right? So I'd say like these are the three main things. And I think the content playbook is changing towards communities. I mean, you're a great example of that, right? Like, I mean, it's pretty amazing what you've done with, this community and the content you're putting out. And it's much more centered around really how can I help my audience with real tools that are very actionable and just help them. And I think HubSpot is known for that and has done probably the best job of all of the companies I know out there.
Yeah, no, great advice. Yeah. So we started content early, of course, outbound sales, founder led referrals network, and LinkedIn and building that community. Yeah. Yeah. Appreciate that insight. So Janis, appreciate your time today and sharing your experience and stories here. So what's coming up? What's coming up next for WeFlow?
Yeah, we're essentially a product led bundling solution around revenue intelligence, right? So after Salesforce hygiene and pipeline management, pipeline visibility, forecasting, we'll expand into more areas that are very known. So things like conversational intelligence and just bundle more functionality at a very attractive price point and a next gen product experience that is easy to use and really enjoyable. And yeah, I think that's like just what we're focused on. And then just more go to market every day, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Continue to push that. So yeah, Janis, really appreciate your time today. If listeners would like to learn more about WeFlow, where should we send them online?
Yeah. Our domain is getweflow.com or just hit me up on LinkedIn if you want to chat. Happy to share around and yeah, I would love to connect.
Yeah. Okay. So if you'd like to learn more, check out getweflow.com or check out Janis on LinkedIn and connect there. So Janis, really appreciate your insight and sharing your experience today. And thanks for the time.
Same here. Thank you so much.